Houston. Houston, we have a problem. DJ Apollo has landed. I repeat, DJ Apollo has landed.
Hear me?
You are listening to the Tales of Music and Film podcast. My name is Christian Taylor, and thank you for clicking on today's episode. And I just want to start by saying, hope you guys are all doing extremely well. It's currently December 21st, 2024, as of recording this episode. So we're about 4 days out from it being Christmas, and 3 days out for Christmas Eve. So that has me very excited. I have finally finished up my Christmas shopping. My last gift showed up in the mail just a few days ago, and I got it all wrapped up and put under the Christmas tree, so my Christmas shopping is all done, and I am beyond thrilled about that. I'm just very happy that everything showed up on time, because I've heard Amazon's been they've been having to change a lot of their expected dates for a lot of people who ordered stuff, because I think they've been getting backed up. But I'm just happy I managed to get all my stuff in on time. So I'm very excited for the holidays, and things are going extremely well on my end. Me and my family, we just went to go see Christmas lights last night. That was a lot of fun. I just got back from my town's coffee shop this morning. Picked up me and my two siblings some drinks and a snack. So yep, I love doing nice things for my family. I love doing that. And if I sound a little nasally, I do apologize. I am recovering from a cold. My nose is still kind of stuffed up, and my voice is starting to come back. It's not quite there yet, but I'll get there. So I just want to apologize if I sound a little nasally. But life is going great, and it's just hard to believe that there's just a couple of weeks left until 2024 comes to an end. And what a amazing year it has been. And I'm going to go into that more when we do our final episode for this year next week. It'll be the 100th and final episode for this year. So that's going to be very exciting. You guys are really going to enjoy that. I have a very cool idea for that episode. So yeah, be looking forward to that. Now today, I figured, hey, how about we do one last movie for this year? And this is a movie that I kept pushing off over and over again. And I realized I have covered its other movies in this film's franchise, but there's always been one that I haven't covered yet, and I wanted to make sure that I covered all of them. How about we talk about Ghostbusters 2? Now, for any of you who have been listening to this show for the last couple of years now, you'll know that I have already covered Ghostbusters 1984, and I covered the two new movies, Ghostbusters Afterlife and Frozen Empire. You can find those episodes on my show, which you can find on Spotify or YouTube. And it's no surprise that I love the Ghostbusters franchise. I love these movies. I got to see Afterlife and Frozen Empire in theaters, and those movies were so darn good. They were amazing. And I grew up watching Ghostbusters 1 and 2 all the time. I was raised like a legit 80s kid. Like, my childhood movies growing up, guys, was, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Back to the Future, the Ghostbuster movies, the Blues Brothers, The Great Outdoors. I love that movie. Like, I watched 80s movies all the time. And Ghostbusters 1 and 2 meant a lot to me. And it was really bothering me that I had covered the other ones, but I haven't covered Ghostbusters 2. And I consider Ghostbusters 2 a Christmas movie, so I figured, hey, what a more fitting movie to talk about for this time of year. And I want to talk about it because there was kind of a resurgence a little bit. So in 2016, when that all-female Ghostbusters reboot movie came out, I think for a good majority of the Ghostbusters fan base, we weren't really a huge fan of that movie, I mean, it bombed big time. It lost millions upon millions at the box office, and the movie wasn't even included in a box set that just came out like a year or two ago. But there's a lot of things that went wrong with that movie, in my opinion. It's just like, but women as the lead characters, that was not the problem. It was just, Ghostbusters 2016 was just a mess. Like, the way it was written, you know, it just wasn't a funny movie, you know. It's just like, and I don't know, I feel like the actresses that they picked, I don't think were the best choices. Now, I would watch a female Ghostbusters movie, I would, but in this instance, it's just like, the jokes were extremely cringy, and the movie was like trying so hard to put men down, if that makes sense. It seems that Hollywood seems to think that the only way to make a strong female movie is to have the women be so mean to men, if that makes sense. Like, they can't do it the healthy way. They think the only way to make women strong is to be as toxic as possible, especially towards men, and tell them how stupid and dumb they are. And I'm sorry, but that's not how that works. Not at all. So I just think 2016 had a lot of problems. The main thing is it was just a goofy mess, and it was just a very cringy. My best friend Jonathan told me, like, he got like 10 minutes in and he had to turn it off. You know, and again, I'm just trying to clarify here, women being the leads was not the problem. It's not that. It's just the way the movie was written is what I have a problem with. But anyway, that movie left a very sour taste in a lot of the fans' mouths, you know, me included. A good amount of the fan base were not happy that their beloved franchise was rebooted with female leads that were just written in not in the best way, you know. So the franchise was basically dead in the water for a while, but thankfully Ghostbusters Afterlife came up and brought the franchise back to life, you know. And I thought it was so funny that literally Afterlife's first trailer erases Ghostbusters 2016 when in the trailer we hear Paul Rudd's character say, you know, there hasn't been a ghost sighting in 30 years. So, like, literally, the first line of dialogue in that first trailer erases the 2016 movie. I just thought that was so funny. But anyway. But if there is one good thing that the 2016 film did, it kind of awoke people's eyes to be like, okay, was Ghostbusters 2 as bad as I remember? And people went back to watch Ghostbusters 2, and they realized, I think a good amount anyway, that the second film was actually nowhere near as bad as it was made to be, because Ghostbusters 2 received a lot of negative feedback when it was released back in 1989. And, I mean, I will admit, is it weaker than the first movie? Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, nothing is going to beat the original 1984 Ghostbusters movie. That film's an 80s masterpiece, as far as I'm concerned. But the second movie I really enjoyed growing up as a kid. You know, I really enjoyed it. So I think a lot of fans went back and realized, okay, this is not that bad. It kind of got, I feel like the movie kind of got a resurgence a little bit. So I figured, hey, let's talk about it for a second. So the movie was directed yet again by Ivan Reitman, who directed the first movie. And I just want to take a minute and say rest in peace to Ivan Reitman, who passed away 2 years ago on February 12, 2022. And he directed Ghostbusters 1 and 2. And he did a darn good job. His son directed Afterlife, which I thought was really cool. And then his son was like co-director or something like that for Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. And I thought it was really nice. When Frozen Empire ended, they had a little thing at the end in memory of Ivan Reitman. And I thought it was a nice little thing to honor him. So yeah, rest in peace, Ivan Reitman, and thank you for helping give us these two amazing Ghostbuster movies. So, Ghostbusters 2 is a 1989 American supernatural comedy film directed by the late great Ivan Reitman and written by Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis. The film stars Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Sigourney Weaver, Harold Ramis, Rick Moranis, Ernie Hudson, and Annie Potts. It is the sequel to the 1984 film Ghostbusters and the second film in the Ghostbusters franchise. Set 5 years after the events of the first film, the Ghostbusters have been sued and put out of business after the destruction caused during their battle with Gozer the Gazarian. When a new paranormal threat emerges, the Ghostbusters reunite to combat it and save the world. And I just want to start by saying, guys, that's a little bit of a plot summary for you on this movie, and we're going to be going into some more detail about some of my favorite scenes in this movie as we progress through this recording. But I just want to start by saying that I absolutely love Ghostbusters 2. I enjoy it a lot. And I mean, when I was a kid, I thought this movie was just as good as the first one. But now that I'm older, I see what a lot of the fans were complaining about. So for anyone who doesn't know, I've been watching some videos over the years about Ghostbusters 2, and it seems the reason why this movie was made the way it was, like, if you noticed, Ghostbusters 2 was a lot more safe. Like, if there's one thing you notice, first off, none of the guys smoke anymore. Because you remember in the first movie, Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, and Ernie Hudson, they all smoked cigarettes throughout the movie, and like there was a lot of adult humor jokes, some swearing, and all of that was taken away in the sequel, and they made Dana a mom to make it even more safe, because around this time, the Ghostbusters, the real Ghostbusters cartoon was airing on TV, and it was a huge hit. The show started airing in 1986, and it ended up airing until like the early 90s. It ran for a good 5 or 6 years. I actually own one of the sketches that was used in one of the episodes. I bought it at a Comic-Con a couple of years ago, and the cartoon was a huge success. So the movie was crafted, to aim towards the kids that were watching that cartoon. Hence the reason why the smoking, the adult humor, and all that was taken away. And personally, I think that was a big mistake. Like, I feel like the movie should have been made to where, adults and kids could watch it. I mean, yeah, the first movie had a lot of adult humor, but I mean, it was hidden pretty well. Like, if you were a kid, you never would have noticed any of that stuff, I mean, as long as it's hidden well, I don't think you have anything to worry about. But I will admit, I think this movie played it a little too safe. Like, they took away a lot of aspects that made the first movie really funny and why it works so well, And apparently, Bill Murray wanted nothing to do with this movie. He didn't want to do a Ghostbusters sequel. He's actually one of the main reasons why we didn't get a third movie. Like, they were going to do a third movie in, like, 91, but Bill just said no. Like, he after the first movie, he was just kind of done. Like, they really had to really convince him to do this movie. And a lot of people complained that his performance in Ghostbusters 2 wasn't that good. But, I mean, I think he did a good job. I mean, there's some scenes you can tell he's just not enthusiastic about it. But, I mean, for most of the movie, I thought he did a really good job. I mean, he gave the same performance he gave in the first movie. But they convinced him to come back to do this because they showed him a script and he liked it. But for some reason, they didn't use it. When he got on set, they were like, oh yeah, by the way, we're not using this script, we're using this one. And Bill was very flabbergasted about it. So, he didn't like this script at all, but he had to find a way to make it work, apparently. I'm just going off of some information from some clips I watched about, the making of Ghostbusters 2. So let's see here. So the movie had a budget of $30 to $40 million, and the box office for this movie was $215.4 million. The movie was released on June 16th of 1989, and the movie was distributed by Columbia Pictures. Now, guys, I gotta tell you, 1989 was a huge year for movies. I mean, like, my gosh, where do you even start? I mean, 1989, just, my gosh, it had so many good movies. Like Batman, like the first Tim Burton Batman movie, Ghostbusters 2, Back to the Future Part 2, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Field of Dreams. I mean, dude, there were so many amazing films that year. Like, it was a really good, I think it was a very good time to be a kid during that year with all the cool stuff that was coming out, So, after the success of Ghostbusters, Columbia Pictures wanted a sequel, but struggled to overcome objections from the cast and crew. As with the first film, Aykroyd and Ramis collaborated on the script, which went through many variations. The pair wanted to convey a message about the consequences of negative human emotions in large cities. They settled on the idea of negative feelings creating a mass of supernatural slime beneath New York City that empowers malevolent spirits. With a budget of $30 to $40 million, filming took place between November 1988 and March of 1989 in New York City and Los Angeles. Production was rushed, and large sections of the film were scrapped after poorly received test screenings. New scenes were written and filmed during reshoots between March and April 1989, only 2 months before its release. Now, that is cutting it really close. I had no idea that that this movie, they had to do reshoots, Like, man, I gotta tell you, like, that would make me very nervous. I mean, like, there's been a lot of movies that have been coming out the last couple of years that I've noticed, where, like, they had to go in and do some reshoots on stuff, and gotta remember, like, when you're making a movie, you're on a big time limit here, So, I mean, it's like, I would be very nervous to have to rush in, and do some reshoots right quick. I'm sure that was probably very frustrating to the cast and crew, thinking that they're all done. Oh, yeah, guys, we're not done yet. We gotta go back and reshoot some stuff. You're like, oh, I thought we were done, So, I bet it has to be very frustrating to have to do that. But I'm actually kind of curious, like, what stuff they cut from this due to the poor test screenings. I'm actually kind of curious to see what that stuff was that was cut. But I really do like the idea that Ghostbusters 2 brought of negative emotion causing, this next big threat to start, because one of the things that I didn't like about this movie was how harsh the Ghostbusters are treated in this movie. I mean, it didn't make any sense to me, even when I was a kid. Like, I remember watching part 2, it's like, why is everybody in this city being so mean to these guys? I mean, they have went out of their way to save hundreds of people. They literally saved the world from Gozer in the first movie. And may I add, like, so apparently they were sued and put out of business for destruction of the city. But can we just can we just say that, remember the whole scene of the Marshmallow Man showing up? He was the one who did the damage, not them. Like, why were they put at fault for that? I don't understand. I mean, I get that Ray was the one who thought of them and all that and made him show up, but I mean, he was the one who did most of the damage. I mean, the guys didn't do that much damage. I mean, Gozer's, pyramid thing showing up on top of the building that they were at, I mean, there was no way to prevent that from happening. Like, that building got absolutely destroyed, but it wasn't their fault. I mean, I think I'll happily take city damage over the world ending, thank you very much, because we can fix the damaged city. So this whole idea of over the 5 years after the first film that the entire city just turned on them, I just thought was really out there. You know, I mean, like, these guys saved the world. They saved the city. They've saved so many people. But throughout most of the movie, everybody is so mean and harsh. I mean, they were sent to court, you know, but I mean, granted, they did accidentally knock out the city's power, and they illegally dug in the middle of the street. I get that stuff, but I mean, that the whole scene of them in court. I mean, like that one construction worker saying that they were the ones who poured that slime in the sewer system. Like, it was their fault. I mean, people are just blaming them from everything. I mean, literally, the film opens with Ray and Winston going to a kid's birthday party, and they show up, and what happens? One of the kids, funny enough, it was Ivan Reitman's son, Jason, when he was a little boy. He walks up to them, he's like, guys, I'm sorry, you're so full of crap. Me and my dad just think you guys are full of crap, and that's why you went out of business. I mean, it's just like, oh my god. I mean, it's just, why? Yeah, they're so full of crap, kid. They saved your life for the entire city. Yeah, what a bunch of losers those guys are. Ugh, you know, it's just, oh my god. Just makes me so freaking mad. I mean, I just don't buy it. You're going to tell me in 5 years these guys are fake charlatans? I mean, the judge hated these guys during the court scene, saying they were fake and all that. I don't believe in ghosts and all that nonsense. I mean, it's just like, oh, you don't believe in ghosts, huh? You want to explain the giant marshmallow-sized creature that walked through the streets? How do you explain that, you know? It's so stupid. But I like the idea that they were going for with negative emotion. Like, that's cool. I think it was just the way it was executed. I mean, I just don't buy for a second that the entire city would just turn on them like that. That don't make any sense to me. So Ghostbusters 2 was released on June 16th, 1989 to generate negative reviews. Critics responded unfavorably to what they perceived as largely a copy of the original movie, but in this copy, they softened the dark humor or the adult humor to be more family friendly. Although the performances of Peter MacNicol and Rick Moranis were repeatedly singled out for praise. As the sequel to the then highest grossing comedy film of all time, Ghostbusters 2 was expected to dominate the box office. Instead, the film earned $215.4 million during its theater run, comparing to the first film's $282.2 million, making it the eighth highest grossing film of the year. Columbia Pictures deemed it a financial and critical failure, effectively dissuading Murray from participating in a third Ghostbusters film. Its soundtrack single On Our Own by Bobby Brown was a success, spending 20 weeks on the United States music charts. The film failed to replicate the cultural impact and following of Ghostbusters. Although some critics retrospectively praised it, Ghostbusters 2 is generally seen as a poor follow-up to Ghostbusters and responsible for stalling the franchise for decades. The film spawned a series of merchandise including video games, board games, comic books, music, toys, and haunted houses. Despite the relative failure of Ghostbusters 2, a second sequel was pursued through to the early 2010s. Following the mixed reviews and financial underperformance of the 2016 series reboot, the series returned to the original films with Ghostbusters Afterlife in 2021 and Ghostbusters Frozen Empire in 2024. And I'll have to say that Ghostbusters 2 has definitely gotten a lot of praise, I think, during the last couple of years. I think a lot of the fans are really starting to realize that the movie is way better than what they thought, you know. I mean, I would rewatch it again right now, you know. And this movie, even though it was a very weak, you know, follow-up to the original film, I don't think it was a good idea that they were trying to follow the cartoon. I mean, I didn't realize this, but they completely redesigned Annie Potts' character. Like, they made her look how she did in the cartoon. I never realized that. It's just she looked extremely goofy to me. I don't know what they were thinking with that. They even made the Ecto-1 look like how it did in the cartoon, You can just tell they were trying really hard to go off of the success of the Ghostbusters cartoon, which I think was a huge mistake. I mean, the first movie, you need to make your sequel to where adults and kids can both enjoy it, That's important, I don't think you should alienate your adult, watchers, That's not good. And, I mean, overall, I think the story for this film was written pretty well. Sure, there's a lot of aspects about it I didn't like, mostly how safe it was. But it had a lot of cool stuff in here. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff in this. Guys, I'm telling you right now, my favorite scene in this movie was the courtroom scene, because I love it. It's so good. My only complaint is, why wasn't Winston, a part of it? That's one thing I didn't like about the two main Ghostbuster films, is how badly Winston's treated. Because if you guys remember, when I covered the original Ghostbusters with a college classmate of mine, Aiden, him and I talked about, it's like Winston was not featured, I don't think, on any of the promotional material for the original Ghostbusters. And you find out, in one of the drafts of the script, he was in the movie, he was in the story, almost the whole time. But they rewrote the script, and he doesn't show up until, halfway in the film. And when he shows up, he barely has, any screen time. I mean, the Stranger Things TV show even took a jab at him, because the 4 kids in Stranger Things dress up as Ghostbusters in season 2, and each one of them was going to play a member of the Ghostbusters, and one of the kids was named, his name is Lucas, and he's black, and they wanted him to be Winston, but when he shows up to meet up with the others, he had a Peter Venkman name logo on his Ghostbusters jumpsuit, and one of the other kids, Mike's like, Lucas, you were supposed to be Winston. We agreed on this. And then Lucas is like, Winston doesn't show up until halfway in the film, and he's not even a scientist, even Stranger Things took a jab at, Winston's character, and, he should have been a main character throughout the entire story, and I think that was not a good thing that he wasn't featured on any of the promotional material. I mean, Ernie Hudson was amazing in this as Winston, and that's the one thing I love about Afterlife and Frozen Empire, is that they're learning from the main 2 films' mistakes, and they're having him play a crucial role in both movies. And that makes me very, very happy. They gave him more screen time. They made him the reason for why the Ghostbusters business is back and running again, And that made me very happy. But, none of the first film's posters, have them on the cover. That never made any sense. Thankfully, the recent Blu-rays for the Ghostbuster films have Winston on the front cover, so that's good at least. But yeah, that's one. Yeah, Ghostbusters 2. They should have gave Winston more screen time. The whole courtroom scene of the guys getting their gear back on to fight those 2 ghosts. Oh, it is so good. I love the orchestra music that's playing while the guys are gearing up, and Peter's like, it's been a couple years since we used this stuff. I hope it still works. I love Egon's science reply. He's like, they should. The power cells have a half-life of 5,000 years. The Ray's like, well, there's no time for a bench test. Well, heat them up. And each one of them turn on their proton packs, And, dude, I'm telling you, one of the most satisfying sounds in the entire world are the proton packs being turned on. Oh, it is so good. It's up there with the M1 Grand Rifle clip being ejected after all the rounds are fired. Oh, it's an amazing sound. But anyway, that whole courtroom scene was amazing, and I love how at the end they trap both ghosts in the trap, and the guys walk up to it. They're like, 2 in the box, ready to go. We be fast and they be slow. It's just, oh yeah, we back in business, baby, you know. And I love how they walk out of the courtroom, and, you know, Peter's like, we are the best, the only Ghostbusters. You know, then the Ghostbusters music plays. The guys are back in business, rolling through the streets in New York, catching ghosts. Oh, that whole sequence was amazing. I wasn't really a big fan of Ghostbusters 2's version of the song. I didn't like it at all. I mean, they should have used the original song from the first movie. I mean, it made one cameo during that birthday party at the beginning of the movie where they played it for a little bit, but that's it. Like, the OG song is so perfect, and Afterlife and Frozen Empire both used it to their full advantage, which makes me very happy, because those films realize, like, how much that theme song means to people. I mean, guys, I have the 1984 Ghostbusters film soundtrack on CD. I listen to the Ghostbusters theme every now and then when I'm driving to work, and it never fails to get me hyped up for my shift at Walmart. I also really did enjoy the new jumpsuits for this movie. The guys in this movie wear these like dark gray colored jumpsuits, and I thought it was a nice change, you know. And so there was some fans speculating if Ghostbusters 2 was still canon, because in Ghostbusters Afterlife, when the Ecto-1 is found in the barn on Egon's farm property, Ecto-1 has been reverted back to how it looked in the original film. So that left a lot of fans speculating, okay, is Ghostbusters 2 no longer canon? But that was quickly diminished, because in Frozen Empire, there's a couple of callbacks to Ghostbusters 2. Like, not long into the movie, you can see footage of Ghostbusters 2 of when they were driving, or they were operating the Statue of Liberty as it's walking through the streets of New York. And when Ray is, you know, dressing up in his jumpsuit, if you look in his locker, you can see the Ghostbusters 2 jumpsuit in there. So Ghostbusters 2 is still canon. But I thought it was really cool that in Frozen Empire, we got a couple of callbacks. Another thing about Ghostbusters 2 I really enjoyed was their villain, Vigo the Carpathian, who is the main antagonist of Ghostbusters 2. I mean, I thought he was right up there with Gozer. I thought he was a great threat. And I liked this whole idea that he was trying to come back into the real world as a physical being, but he needed a human host and sacrifice in order to make that happen. So, of course, out of all the children that he picks, he picks Dana Barrett's son. So, you know, what a weird coincidence, you know, of all the kids, he happened to pick Dana's. But anyway, but I thought it was really cool the way he was written, you know. I thought he was a really menacing threat. I mean, heck, in the 2009 Ghostbusters video game, he has a cameo in there where the painting is in the Ghostbusters firehouse, and the guy who voiced him came back to voice him again, you know. So I thought that was really cool that they included him, you know, for the video game. I thought he was a very menacing, scary villain, you know, like he was very menacing to say the least. And I really like that idea of like how the painting is like its physical being, and he like, if you stare at him for too long, he'll like possess you or something like that. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but I really did enjoy that, and I like his backstory. Like, I really did enjoy that small scene where the guys show up at the museum where Dana works, where she's like restoring old art. That's where the painting shows up, and the guys go in there to inspect it. And I like how when they're outside, you know, Peter asks Ray if he found any information on Vigo, and Ray's like, yeah, he was killed, like he was hung, executed, stabbed, had his tongue ripped out, and all these things. And then Peter's just like, ouch. I just thought that was a nice, funny little scene. Like Ray's just listing all these horrible things that happened to Vigo when they killed them, and Peter's just like, oh, well, anyway, but anyway, yeah, I thought Vigo was done very well, and the whole painting idea I thought was very well executed. I mean, as far as these strong elements go in this movie, I loved him as a villain, and I loved the pink slime that's introduced in the movie. I really did enjoy that, how it's literally flowing all throughout the city, and I like how the slime, when it makes contact with enough negative emotion, all these horrible things happen. Because going back to the courtroom scene, the guys had a jar of it, and it was on the evidence table, and when the judge was yelling at them, the jar kept filling up more and more until it blew up like a bomb, and those two ghosts spawned out of it and started wreaking havoc on everybody in the courtroom. I thought that was a really cool idea. Then later on in the movie, Ray and Egon are doing tests with it, and when they poured some into a toaster and they turned on music, the toaster started moving around and kind of looked like it was dancing to the music or something. So this slime can somehow animate things. Like later on in the film, when the slime is, going around the city on the surface, this lady was wearing this fur coat, and the dog heads on it or something come alive. Like, it animates stuff. I thought that was cool. And then going back to the finale of the movie, they wanted to have a callback to the Marshmallow Man in the first movie, so the guys literally used slime to animate the Statue of Liberty. And they operate it, and it walks through the streets of New York, and they use it to get back into the museum to rescue Dana from Vigo. I thought that was a very over-the-top sequence, but for some reason, in my eyes, it works. I mean, it fit the goofy aspect of the first movie just fine. I really didn't see a problem with it. So I really did enjoy the finale. And one last thing I liked about this movie was how they brought in, new equipment. Like Egon invents these new slime guns, or they can use this pink slime and use it as a weapon against Vigo, where, it's like fight fire with fire kind of thing. And I like how they defeat him at the end by, they all blast him with their slime devices, and it sends him back into the painting, and it drains him of all his powers. I always like that aspect of them inventing new equipment to deal with the threat of that movie. I really did enjoy that. I mean, both the main movies did a really good job of, like, creating these new scientific inventions and dynamics and all that stuff, that most of it's fake, but I mean, it works so well, and it's written in a way where it sounds like it could be a real thing. I like that a lot. I really do. And I'm very happy that they kept that trend going with Afterlife and Frozen Empire. But now I want to get into some of the things about Ghostbusters 2 that I didn't like. And one of the main things I didn't like about it, it's just like a lot of the elements of the story. Like, I didn't like the whole idea of Dana being a mom. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's just like, really? Why did she have to have a kid? Like, I never really enjoyed that too much. I mean, Oscar barely has, like, any screen time in this movie. Like, I don't think you see him for very much. And his dad was the long-haired guy that was playing cello with Dana back in the first movie. You see him for like one or two scenes, then that's it. Then you find out during the 5 years between Ghostbusters 1 and 2, Dana and Peter broke up. She went back to dating the long-haired guy. I guess they dated for a while. Dana gave birth to their son, then he ditched her and ran off to Europe, apparently, and then she never hears from him ever again. And then Peter and Dana get back together again, and then that's it, But Oscar's not even mentioned in Afterlife. Like, we have that after-credits scene of Peter and Dana, where Dana has that shocking device attached to Peter, and she's doing the card game with them, but there's no mention of Oscar, like, at all, But I don't know. I just didn't like the whole idea of Dana being a mom. I mean, I know darn well they did that because they were trying to make the film more, family friendly for, again, all the kiddos who watch the real Ghostbusters cartoon. But that aspect didn't make any sense to me at all. And I've already touched upon the whole, the whole city hating them just because they caused maybe a little bit of destruction to the city that they saved, by the way, and the world. And another thing about this movie I just didn't really enjoy was that I think it got a little too silly in some places. I mean, again, they were trying to take all these aspects from the real Ghostbusters cartoon and try to bring it to real life, and it just didn't work. Like, they redesigned Slimer to make him look how he did in the cartoon, and instead of making him a dangerous threat, like, he was dangerous in the first movie. I mean, he was their first job, in the first film. And what did they do with him? They turned him into to a comic relief in part 2. And there's literally a scene of him driving up in a bus to pick up Rick Moranis' character. I mean, seriously? And there's another scene in the film where he's caught eating, he's eating Rick Moranis' lunch, and Rick Moranis freaks out and jumps behind the couch or something. And I like how Slimer, multiple scenes, he's just there chilling out in the firehouse. Like, why aren't the guys trapping him and putting him back in the containment unit? Why are they just letting him roam around the firehouse? Because because they do that in the cartoon. It makes no sense at all. Like, that scene of Slimer driving the bus, I facepalm hard every time. It's like, guys, did you really have to adapt the cartoon that much? Really? There's just, that cartoon, they should have pretended that it never existed. It's just, I don't know what they were thinking with that, but it was just a little too out there and silly, in my opinion. And the next thing that drove me crazy, and I will agree with what the reviewers were saying, that they copied way too many things from the original Ghostbusters with this. I mean, where do we even start? I mean, we have another short, creepy guy hitting on Dana when she's not interested in this guy in any kind of way. In the first movie, it was Rick Moranis' character, and now in this one, it was Dr. Enosh Posha, I think is how you say his name, and and the guy was an outright weirdo. I mean, it's just, he's very forgettable. I mean, he's never mentioned again after this movie. He's the one who supervises Dana's work at the Manhattan Museum of Art. She was the only restorer whom he did not, berate for shabby work. Due to his crush on her, he was roundly turned down when he asked her out. I mean, it's yeah, what do you expect, dude? You're an outright creep. Go away, what a creep. It's okay, let's go down the roster. Okay, we have the creepy guy hitting on Dana. Okay, what else are we going to take from the first movie? Oh, let's have a very mean and just an outright narcissistic man trying to put the Ghostbusters out of business. In the first movie, it was Walter Peck. In this movie, it's a guy named Kurt Fuller, who's played by actor Jack Hardemair, I think's how you say his name. But yeah, Kurt is on the mayor's team, because you find out in Ghostbusters 2, the mayor, David Margulies, he plays the mayor of New York City, and he's running for re-election in part 2, and then Kurt's like, listen here, fellas, the mayor's running for re-election. He doesn't need any bad publicity from you clowns, So the guy is the Walter Peck of this movie, who is trying really hard to keep these guys from the mayor as much as possible while he's running for re-election, and he really tries going as far out of his way as possible to get these guys put out of business. And towards the end of the film, Kurt Riddle, he literally has the 4 guys locked away in a insane asylum because they were going to go to the mayor and tell him about what's going on under the streets of New York with the pink slime. So Kurt literally has them all arrested and sent into an insane asylum. It is absolutely insane. This guy is such a narcissistic person. It's hilarious. the lengths that he goes to keep these guys away from the mayor is absolutely insane. But he's literally Walter Peck 2.0. He has no character in this movie, other than the fact that he's a jerk, just like Walter Peck. I mean, they should have just brought him back. I'm honestly very surprised they didn't just bring Walter back again for this movie, you know. But they did end up bringing him back as an antagonist for the 2009 video game, and they had the same actor voice him for it. And in Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, they brought back the same actor to reprise his role again. So I think it was cool they finally acknowledged, hey, let's bring him back, you know, instead of making another clone copy of him in the form of a different character, you know. Okay, what else can we take from the first Ghostbusters film? Oh, let's have Anna Potts be in a very awkward relationship. In the first movie, it was her constantly hitting on, you know, on Egon, but not really making much success. Okay, in part 2, let's have her get together with Rick Moranis' character, you know, Louis Tully. Let's have Janine and Lewis be a couple in this. And I'm just like, really? Was that really necessary? You know, I mean, it's just like, so in part 2, you know, Janine has given up trying to hook up with Egon. It seemed like they were starting to form a relationship in the first movie, but then it was just outright abandoned in part 2, and now she just randomly hooks up with Louis Tully. It's like, okay, you know, and I wasn't really a fan of their relationship, like, at all. It just randomly shows up halfway through the film, and it's just like, okay. I mean, you could literally take this relationship out of the movie, and it wouldn't have changed anything. I mean, their relationship is just outright abandoned in the sequels. I mean, when Janine shows up in Afterlife and Frozen Empire, like, there's no mention of Lewis in any kind of way. I mean, apparently they tried getting Rick Moranis to show up for Afterlife and Frozen Empire, I believe, and he said no both times. He said no to both movies, my recollection is. I mean, the guy retired from acting in, like, the mid-90s, I think, because, sadly, Rick Moranis' wife passed away from a disease, I believe. It may have been cancer, I'm not sure. I would look it up just to make sure, but he lost his wife, sadly, and he quit acting to raise his kids, and I have nothing but the highest respect for him for doing that. Like, he threw away the fame and fortune and all that, and he went back to what really mattered, his family, you know, and taking care of his kids. Like, that's really important, so I really admire him for doing that, you know. That is, like, dude, high respect to Rick Moranis for that. But yeah, he doesn't act anymore, so I guess they had to make an excuse to why he's not in the sequel movies. But anyway, so it looks like the relationship between Janine and Lewis has been outright dropped, and to tell you the truth, I'm beyond thrilled about it, because I just thought that they were very cringy as a couple. I don't know why that was even there, but again, they just kept stealing things from the first movie, and it's like, okay, what's another thing we can take? Okay, we need some giant object walking through the streets of New York. Okay, it was the Marshmallow Man in the first movie. Hey, I have an idea. Let's have them animate the Statue of Liberty and have it walk through the streets. There we go. It's like, oh, okay then, you know, but like I was saying earlier, that part I actually did kind of like. I thought it was really out there. I mean, heck, is it really that much different than the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man walking through the streets in New York? I mean, you know, let's keep the ridiculousness going, shall we? You know, but anyway, I just really enjoyed that a lot. It was really out there and funny and over the top, and I'm here for it. I did think it was really cool how there was just this random cameo of Titanic. Yeah, the most random thing, you know, like when near the end of the movie, when the slime was attacking the city and all these spiritual things were happening, and there's literally a scene where these two guys out in the docks look out their window, and Ghost Titanic is just parked, you know, at a dock, and all the ghost people are just walking off the ship, and the guy's just like, well, I mean, better late than ever. You know, it's just, oh my gosh, that was so funny. You know, it was just the most random thing. Hey, here's the Titanic, everybody. You know, I mean, as a kid, I was like, oh, okay then. But anyway, that's really all I have, like, negative wise. I mean, like I said, I do disagree. I do agree with what the reviewers were saying, how this movie did copy paste a lot of things from the first movie. And lastly, I didn't like the idea of Peter and Dana being separated. You know, I mean, of course, it's a sequel. There has to be some kind of conflict. Okay, their relationship went south, but I mean, did it have to though? I would have liked it better if they were still together in this movie. You know, I think there's a way to make conflict, you know, without having to outright separate the couple. You know, I feel like they should have kept them together and made the conflict in a different form. I mean, I think it would have been cool if Peter was the father of Oscar. Like, that would have been great, you know? Like, Peter has his own family, you know? Like, that would have been... I would not have complained about that in any kind of way, you know? I think that would have worked. I really think so, you know? But that's really about it. I've talked about the things I liked and the things I disliked about this movie, but my ending thoughts is that I think Ghostbusters 2 is a good sequel. I wouldn't say it was an outright failure. I mean, it's a good movie. And like I said, if you look up, you know, people reacting to this movie for the first time on YouTube, I think I've noticed that the movie is gaining a huge following. Thankfully, thanks to the 2016 film, I think it made fans go back and realize, okay, this film, maybe I treated you a little too harshly, you know? And I'm glad the movie is getting a lot more attention, and I'm actually very happy that I'm getting the chance to talk about it finally, because the movie is 35 years old this year, so I wanted to really talk about it, so I'm beyond thrilled that finally, after half a year, I'm finally in talking about Ghostbusters 2, but I think it's a great sequel. And I would watch it again right now if I had time. But I love this movie. I think he did a good job continuing the story. And I am really sad that we never did get a Ghostbusters 3. But theoretically, we did get one in the form of the 2009 video game. I mean, Dan Aykroyd, the man himself who came up with the Ghostbusters idea, he says the game is canon, so that's all I need. The 2009 Ghostbusters game, all the actors from the main two movies come back to voice themselves, like the four Ghostbusters. Annie comes back to voice Janine. Walter Peck comes back. He's voiced by the same guy. So it is truthfully the third installment that we waited a long time for. It's just not in movie form. It's in video game form. And they used the story idea that they were going to use for Ghostbusters 3, so we got it. It's just in video game form. I just wish that the sequel movies Afterlife and Frozen Empire would give the game some attention, you know? Because it's never... The game isn't mentioned in either in Afterlife or Frozen Empire. And I wish that they would mention it because the story in that game was really good. I think the game really learned from the mistakes that Ghostbusters 2 made. I mean, dude, this game brought so many aspects back from the first movie, and it worked so well. You know, my only complaints is I wish that Dana was in this. Apparently, Sigourney Weaver was not interested in voicing herself for the game, but when she found out that Bill Murray was going to be involved in it, she was like, okay, I guess I'll do it. But by the time she made her decision, it was too late. So Dana isn't in the game at all. She's not in this story, and she's not even... Her and Oscar aren't mentioned at all, and they made a new love interest for Peter, but... So that was really sad, and I was really wishing that... And Louis Tully isn't he's not in the game either, because Rick Moranis, you know, by that point, he wasn't acting or doing anything like that anymore. So both their characters are not in the game, and I wish that they were, because then it would have been, you know, a perfect trilogy. But the story is still amazing without them, you know, and the game was a really good conclusion to the story. You know, it gave us that third story that we were waiting 25 years to see by that point, and having all the OG actors come back to voice themselves, it was the icing on the cake. And so we did get that third installment, but you know, you can't help but wonder sometimes, you know, what would this have looked like in movie form? There's always going to be that part of me that wishes that we had gotten that third movie in the early 90s. It would have been amazing, but it just wasn't meant to be. But hey, like I said, right now it's a really good time to be a Ghostbusters fan, you know, because we got Ghostbusters Afterlife and Frozen Empire, both good movies. I like them a lot. If you guys want to check out my recordings of me talking about those films, like, feel free to do so. I had a lot of good things to say about both of them. And now we have a new Ghostbusters show on the way on Netflix, apparently, and I saw that Ernie Hudson was interviewed recently about the future of Ghostbusters, and right now it's sounding very promising in my opinion. So, like I said, right now it's a really good time to be a Ghostbusters fan. I love Ghostbusters. They're part of my childhood, and the Ghostbusters will always have a very special place in my heart. I mean, some of my childhood dreams I want to achieve someday is, one, I want to drive an Ecto-1. I want to drive one so bad with that famous siren blaring. I want to do that at least once in my life. I want to. Or at the very least, I want to sit in one just once. That would be amazing. Second of all, I want to get me my own Ghostbusters jumpsuit and proton pack. I want to do that so bad. Someday in my life, I want to do it. And I really hope I get that chance. I would love to. That's my childhood dream of mine someday, is to have my own Ghostbusters costume and proton pack. So, someday, I'm going to do it. Someday. But yeah, I hope you guys really did enjoy me talking about Ghostbusters 2. I'm happy that finally I've now covered all the main Ghostbuster movies. Hope you guys enjoyed everything that I talked about, and we are now one episode away from hitting 100 episodes. My plan is to do the final episode maybe on like the last day of December, like December 31st or something. Like, I'm gonna try to see if I can get it uploaded right before midnight as we approach the year 2025. So next year is already sounding very promising in my opinion, and I'm very excited to end this year on the highest note possible. 2024 has been one of the best years of my life, and I can't wait to see what happens next year. So I want to thank you guys for helping me on this amazing journey of being a part-time podcaster. It means so much to me that you guys have been enjoying all my content and just listening to me talk about these movies and music that I love. So without you guys, this show wouldn't have happened. So thank you so much for your amazing support and just taking time out of your day to listen to me. And I would like to just add that for the final episode of this year, I'm going to be covering my top 10 favorite movies of 2024. Guys, this year was an amazing year for movies. There were so many good movies that came out this year, in my opinion. And there's so many of them that I want to give a mention to. And I just cannot believe that I'm at that point, 100 episodes. I mean, I just can't believe it, I've been hosting this show for 2 years at this point, and it's just, wow, man, what a journey it has been. And I am very excited to close out the year 2024 on the highest note possible. And this 100th episode, it's going to be a real fun one, and I can't wait for you guys to listen to it. So until next time, my name is Christian Taylor, and you are listening to the Tales of Music and Film.